Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today's video is featuring the new Watercolor Brush Markers Winter Wonderland set from Altenew. I'm also using the Crown Bloom stamp set and then the Best Buds stamp set for my sentiment. So here they have released the spring earlier in 2018, and then the winter is now. These are just two of them kind of comparatively. While I am stamping and masking, I'm doing some no-line watercolor painting. So I'm working on Canson watercolor paper, and I'm going to use this fade-out ink from Ink on 3 to stamp my images down. And I'm just going to do what I normally do. So I'm going to basically stamp it, mask it, stamp the next thing, mask that. Just because I wanted some really pretty, like flowers. So winter is a struggle for me because there's not a lot of color, like doing like winter scenes, or they're muted colors, and I love bright colors. So sometimes I just struggle to get it done, and I have to default to what I love, which is the bright colors and the florals. So here we are. While we are watching the stamping and the masking, I'm going to talk a little bit about the colors that come in these two sets. So the spring one that came out had and all of these coordinate with their inks. Altenew's great about that. Their inks match their, paper matches the whole, like they have like the little cubes. It's all good stuff. So these watercolor brush markers do coordinate with their inks. In the spring, you got Midnight Violet, Rubelite, Autumn Blaze, Warm Sunshine, Limeade, Moss, Emerald, Sea Breeze, Dusk, and Evening Gray. The winter set, you get a Ruby Red, Rouge, Citrus Burst, Mountain Mist, Lagoon, Emerald, Persian Blue, Jet Black, Espresso, and a Metallic Silver, which is a super extra cool pen. The only color that overlaps between the two is the Emerald. I do have both of them. And I think they're both really good sets. I like the winter one. The Ruby Red is it is red, but then it waters down to like a really beautiful kind of like a pinkish color, which is, I think, pretty traditional with most watercolors. The reds, usually you have to like continually build up the color to get a red or mix it with something else to make it a little bit deeper. So I have stamped and masked a bunch of different leaves and flowers, and then there's this little teeny tiny flower that I also wanted to include in there just as something a little extra to kind of like fill in those gaps in my, I don't even want to call it a bouquet because I really just put it in the bottom right hand corner, but we're going to call it a bouquet because I don't know what else to call it. You also have to forgive me, it is early in the morning and I have my man voice on. We are back after school break, so getting up early, and I always pack Peanut's lunch. That's just, I don't know, he's a packer. His dad's a packer, so that doesn't really surprise me. He doesn't ever want to really eat at school. He asked me one time, I think they were having pizza or something. He asked me one time if he could buy, and I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then the next morning, he was like, I changed my mind, which actually works for me because I pack his lunch the morning before he goes to school. I don't really, I could pack it the night before and it probably wouldn't be a big deal. It's just PB&J, right? But I don't know, I just feel like I don't like when I pack my lunch the night before and it sits all night. So I don't do it for him. Anywho, back to this card real quick. So I like a messier watercolor look, but I like to be very controlled about it. So what I like to do is I like to put down just a line of color where I want it to be the darkest. And then I go in with a damp paintbrush. This is a number 2 round brush from the Silver Brush Company. And then with the damp paintbrush, I like to pull the color the rest of the way out into the petal. So I put the line down. Then I go in and with a damp brush, I just wet the petal with my paintbrush. And here I'm going to bring in another color. This is I think the Citrus Burst. I really like mixing colors in my images. I just think it makes it more interesting. So for this one, I'm starting still in the I guess, less colored area, the lighter colored area, and then pulling out that ruby red into the rest of the petal. I try to be conscientious of not overworking it and letting the water do the work, because that really is when watercolor is most beautiful, is when you let it do its own thing. But like the control freak in me doesn't want to let it do its own thing, you know what I'm saying? So I try to make myself back off, so that it can do its own blending, and I'm not, because otherwise I get frustrated. I get frustrated with myself for not backing off. I get frustrated with the way it looks. It doesn't feel flowy or light. It feels like I mixed in, two colors together. If you have not watercolored before, you want to make sure you're not working in two areas that are right next to each other while they're wet. I felt like some of the petals could use a little bit more yellow, and so I went in and added that in. That is one of the nice things about these particular markers that I have not noticed with other watercolor markers I've used, like my Zigs. I know I can't. These ones, it appears that there is no issue with going back in and adding pigment directly from the marker on top of something that is wet. With my Zig Clean color markers, I can't do that. The pigment isn't strong enough and it waters out almost immediately. So, yeah, that's just something that's nice because I don't have to keep like an acrylic block on the side that I scribble on and then add in more color. I just wanted to let you know, because this is such a large piece, at some point I am going to speed it up, because otherwise we would just be here all day long. And I don't have all day. Sorry, guys. I love y'all, but I don't have all day. I actually am, while Peanut is in school today, I am going to teach a painting class at the senior center in the city that I work in. So we talked about, I think it was before Christmas. It was right before Christmas. We did like these signs with the youth group kids, where they, could paint their own background and then put kind of like an encouraging little quote on top of it. And we had a couple of different options. And so I had done that, and then we had shared it on some social media for the department. And the lady who runs our senior center, who I've known forever, and she's just wonderful, we were talking, and I told her, I said, listen, I would really, because I used to go in and do classes for like senior citizens, and I said I would really like to get back into that. If you have something that you think that they would like to do, as far as like art or being creative, they already have a lady who does cards, so that was out. But she was like, well, I know you guys did the signs, and I think that they would really like that. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to go in and we're going to paint some canvases, and I'm excited to spend a little bit of time with them and see how it goes. So I will let you guys know how that works. For this flower here, and we have sped things up at this point, I switched from the ruby red to the rouge color, which is a little bit more peachy. It's super pretty. But again, just I like adding a bunch of different colors. You guys know this. And I apologize for my sniffling, but I apparently decided that this morning was a good morning to have like this 16 sneeze attack. And now I can't make it stop. But I can't not do the voiceover right now because I have to go do this painting class in an hour and 20 minutes. So this is all the time I have in my day, or you're not going to get this video. So I figured you guys would probably just want me to be like, suck it up, Sally, this is where we're at. On the final card, you're going to notice some things that are different than they are in the video. And here's why. I have a toddler, and I'm not smart. That's pretty much what it comes down to. So 2 blog hops ago, I got confused. And so I had painted this card. I actually painted this card, I think, in, I want to say like September. I painted this card, and because I had signed up to do 1 blog hop, and I got it confused with this blog hop, and so I had already done the card, And I was like, well, whatever, it's done. But I didn't take any photographs of it because it wasn't due for forever, and I am a procrastinator. You guys know how I roll. So I hadn't taken any photos of it. I finished the card, basically set it aside, and then, just moved on to the next 24 million things that I'm responsible for in my life. So when I did that, and I made that life decision to not take that photograph and just set it aside, pretty much what happened was my child, and it really was not his fault. But he had been watercoloring. He really likes making cards with me, and so we paint and use markers and all of these things. At some point, and I'm not really sure how it happened because I didn't notice it until I went to go photograph my card, he got 2 little splotches of purple watercolor on my card. And I was like, oh man, I'm not repainting this whole thing. I'm not, because I'm just not starting over so I can take a photo. That's not going to happen. So thankfully, as we get closer to the end of the video, you'll see that those little teeny tiny flowers I put in to fill in, I actually did them like a purplish blue color. So it's not completely outside of my color wheelhouse to add purple splatters. So first I tried to remove them. That's where like my brain went immediately. Like, hey, it's watercolor. If I add water to it, it should lift up the pigment. And that probably would have been true if I would have caught it right away. But who knows how long this had been sitting by the time that I even noticed it. So when I tried to remove it, it did come up some. And I was actually pretty impressed considering how dark it was. It was like this huge purple splotch. It did come up some, but not enough for me to be able to like pretend it wasn't there. Especially since purple wasn't part of the larger blooms in this set. So I ended up just basically pumping out a bunch of the Midnight Violet onto, until it was like dripping, and then I just splattered my card with it. The other thing that you will notice is when I originally stamped the sentiment, I think the first time I stamped it in like Mountain Mist or something like that. Maybe it was Lagoon. I can't remember. I stamped it in like a lighter color. I didn't love it. I stamped it again in a darker green. I didn't love that. That's what you'll see at the end of the video. And so when I ended up going back in to do the purple splatters, I actually changed it to black. So I used the Altenew Jet Black. I don't really know why I try. I don't really know why I try to stamp in other color inks, because I love black. Like, I just like the way it looks with bright colors. And so sometimes I do try to go outside the wheelhouse, and I'm not going to stop trying that because sometimes it's good. Like, sometimes I'll stamp in a navy and then I really like it. But usually the only time I ever try to stamp in other color inks, like my sentiment, I mean, is if I'm doing no line coloring. If I am doing black outline stamping, I'm typically going to put my sentiment in black. But if I do no line, sometimes I feel like it looks nicer if the sentiment's a little bit softer. In this particular case, though, I couldn't commit to it, couldn't do it. The little purple flowers here that I'm putting down are actually this, I'm calling them purple, but they aren't really. They're like a purple blue. It's the Persian blue that's included in this set, and it's beautiful, and I can actually see using that for like snow, putting the shadows in snow so it doesn't just look like flat white. I wish I had found a way to incorporate the silver metallic marker into my project, because it really is very beautiful and it works very well. But just for what I was feeling, I couldn't do it. I couldn't find a way to fit it in. Let's talk about this fade out ink for a second. So the purpose of the fade out ink is that it takes on the color of whatever you're coloring over top of it. And I kind of struggled with that a little bit this time around. I didn't feel like it really took on the color of my watercolors. And I don't know if maybe my stamp was a little bit dirty. So it wasn't like a true fade out. It could absolutely be user error, like 100%, but that was just something that I noticed with this. I also, with no line coloring, have a hard time getting a lot of dimension. And that is a struggle for me because when I do my Copic coloring, I do like very strong contrast. Like just something that I picked up from Sandy Allnock and just carried that with me through the things that I have learned. Because I do feel like she's right. It gives you a lot more dimension. So on the left-hand side of the card, I wanted it to be a little bit more flowy. So you'll see in like what I did with the top leaves and then the petals that came down is I put the pigment where it belongs, but then I kind of brought it outside of its, I guess, stamped area so that it would appear a little bit more fluid. That's what I mean when I say I like a messy look, but I like it to be more controlled. For the leaves, I used a couple of different color combinations just to, again, make it a little bit more interesting. So some of the areas have more of that lagoon color. Some of the areas have more of the emerald color, which is more of a, a true green color. Just to kind of, again, mix up the bouquet and have things be different and, multi-dimensional, because I do struggle to get that dimension. I kind of make up for it with the amount of color mixing that I do, because I just think it makes it, more interesting. But yeah, so my child, I should have taken those photos. And usually I do, because this has happened before. There was back over the summer, I was doing a card with Lily the Lamb from Honeybee Stamps. And I had did the background, and then I removed the mask because I wanted to do a 1-layer card. And I removed the mask, and she was all white and beautiful, and I was going to add the shading to her the next day, and I left it sitting on my craft desk. And then the next day when I came home from work, Lily the Lamb was colored peach. He used, I don't know, like an EOO or something like that, and I couldn't cover it up because she was white, so I couldn't cover up the peach color, and I didn't want to make her peach. So that one ended up being okay because I just die cut her and then, smacked her down right on top of the old one. But, I have been in this position before, and you would think that I would have learned my lesson in trusting my child to keep his hands to himself, or his hands off of the items that are not his. But, silly mommy, touch whatever I want. And I know that. But this one I do genuinely think was an accident. I don't think he realized that his watercolor was sitting on top of my card. And so it just was what it was. And sometimes happy accidents. I do think looking at the card that I had when I was finished versus the card that I have after, adding the spatters and things like that, I do kind of think I like the spattered one better. It's just something different that I wouldn't have thought to do. Once I'm done here with the watercoloring, because I don't really love the centers, I kept trying to work with them and add darker color, and I just wasn't really getting anything that I really, it looked so flat to me, guys. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. It just looked like it had no dimension. Let me use the word dimension one more time. But it wasn't popping off the page at me, and it was a much softer look, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't prefer it, and I wanted a little bit more definition inside those flowers. So because I really couldn't get it with the markers, I decided to go in with a different kind of marker. So these are the Altenew Artist Markers, and basically all I'm doing is just using the brush tip end to give myself basically like some stippling dots on the inside of the flowers so that they are a little bit darker and they do have a little bit more dimension. I think I used 3 colors total, and you guys know the deal. I'll link all of everything that I used. This video is part of a blog hop, and Altenew is generously giving away some prizes, so you can find all of that information over on my blog, which will be linked below if you are watching on YouTube. But But yeah, I think it's a super pretty card. I do like the colors that come in the set. And then if you decide you want to go over to the blog, I have another card that I did. I didn't do a video on it, but combining more of the spring and fall, I'm sorry, spring and winter water. Why can't I talk? Why, Lord? The watercolor brush marker sets. That would combine both of them a little bit more, so it's a little more pink and purple. And then after I stamp the sentiment, I just put some sequins on it, and then that's the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.